Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Loading Mag NUFC. We're back again for another Away Days special. And yeah, I apologise for a slightly late start. Literally rushed back from work. Got in about 15 minutes ago. Quick shower, refresh, and straight on. So if I end up sleeping out on the streets tonight, you'll know exactly why. But look, we roll as always. Welcome to everyone in the chat. So many in the chat, but first and foremost, Richie, how are you, my man? How's things?
I'm all right, mate. I'm a good week so far. So recovering from the weekend, the result, and hopefully, you never know, fingers crossed, we might be able to get a positive result on Saturday, just to continue the week.
We can only hope, that's for sure. But glad things have been going well for yourself, and it's been a more positive week. I think that, if I'm the Newcastle perspective, I think Newcastle fans in general have been a little bit more positive after the disappointment on Sunday and looking ahead to what could be a massive group of games before the end of the season. You know, what are your initial thoughts going into this game on Sunday? On Saturday, should I say? Are you? I don't want to use the word, are you confident, but are you...
It's the most positive ever being about us you going at the Etihad before, put it that way. That's, you know, if you look at all the past exploits down there, our record isn't great, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? It's, I think, was it just the League Cup one where, was it Ryan Taylor and Rolando Aarons scored? We won down there in the League Cup, I think it was once. I think that's about the only time we've ever won down there. So, do you know what, we've just played their rivals the other day, and stat-wise, apart from obviously shots on target, we dominated the possession wise and stuff like that. So we look at the game we had at the St James. It's our second home game of the season. Fantastic game that was. I was lucky enough to be there, and it was just absolute immense game, full stop. And Sam Maxim's best game of the season. 3-1 up just after half time. Possibly should have been up before, and there was the issue with the sharp penalty off John Stones challenge and stuff like that. So we could have even been even better on the day. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, it was our first to look at Haaland in the Premier League and how good a player he is now. And obviously, at the time, it was obviously he's still learning the Premier League game as he got there, but it makes for a fantastic game on Saturday, lad. You know what I mean? It's I'm just hoping we can get back a little bit of form, and then hopefully keep off. Their neighbours can do us a favour by beating the Reds at Liverpool on the Sunday as well, just to keep them a bit further away from the top four.
Yeah, desperate to beat them one Sunday, and then desperate for them to win the next in order to keep Liverpool down there. I think that's where we are now in this race for the top four, that's for sure. But I think you're right. It was the Aaron's Sissoko team up that got us into the next round of the cup. I remember watching that thinking, wow, like this is unreal. We've just not been able to replicate it since, but fingers crossed, as you said, Richie, maybe we can go down there and do something a little bit different. Just before we get Daps in, because I know Daps was looking for something. You guys in the chat and girls in the chat will never guess what he's been looking for. Me and Richie in the back were just like, what is going on? But he's looking for something. Hopefully he's found it. But just a quick shout out to everyone. We've got the likes of Simon Rudd in the chat. Welcome, Simon. Hopefully you spent your membership winnings well. Lisa Mole, our spanner in the chat. How are you? Les Stapleton, Would I? Shane. We've got Jordan for life. Paul Gallen, thank you for always supporting the channel. Michael Palmer is in the chat. PDK. Trippier for Prime Minister. Love that name. Great stuff. Tom Lynch, great to have you in the chat, Tom. Hope you are well. And many, many more. And of course, we've got Daz, our own loaded member in the chat as well, including a couple of early questions from Tom Dixon. So if you haven't got your questions in like Tom already, then make sure you get them in. I think Lisa's already put that in the chat. But look, as always, when we preview a game, we say it every week, we can't do this without the opposition's perspective, and it's a pleasure to welcome in Daps from NeverAFoul podcast. Let's welcome in. Hopefully he's found what he was looking for. How you doing, my man? How's things?
I haven't found it.
Just to tell the viewers what you.
So I found Shearer.
Oh, he's got Big Al.
I found Shearer, but it's Steve Howie. I know I've got Steve Howie, right? Because he's that one player that I keep coming across going, I don't even know why I bought this one. But I think when I was young, my mum just bought me every England player because you couldn't get many City players back then. But Beardsley, what a player he was.
Oh, Beardo.
But this guy. But it's the funniest thing is the colour. And the worst thing is that in 96, he had blonde hair.
Yeah, he had the peroxide blonde hair that Foden was famous for in recent years.
Yeah.
But what a player, man. Listen, Gaza for me, I met Gaza, I met Gaza in a toilet in Portugal. He was with Jimmy Five Bellies. He was with Brian Robson. He was with Steve Howie. And then, no, not Steve Howie, Mark Hateley from Rangers. And then all their families. And I bumped into him. Like, we saw all of them except for Gaza. And then I went in. I said, imagine if Gaza was here. And he was like, yeah, he's not though, is he? Then I went in the toilet and he was there and he was trying to shake my hand while I was going for a piss. And it was like, can I just... But then after that, I saw him constantly. But what a player, man. What a player.
He was.
What a player.
Yeah.
Guys, you let me down at the weekend though.
We said we weren't going to talk about it. We said we weren't going to talk about it. But look,
do you know what it is?
Go on, you talk about it from your perspective, mate. Talk about it from your perspective.
So, the thing is, right, is that I run a channel with a United fan, right? And the United fan is a fucking shameless United fan, right? And even more so, I love him to bits, but like in the summer, me and him, when we were doing our predictions for this season, I was very adamant that at this point, it wasn't top four. It was who will break the big six. And I was saying Newcastle will. And it might be your spot they take. And he was like, he's got a dislike for Newcastle. I don't know why. I think something might have happened up there one time or something. And I said, if you go on their form from January till the end of the season, right, why would they not break the top four? Furthermore, they're going to strengthen in the summer because this was early in the summer. But his arrogance going into the cup final just made me want you lot to smash him even more. And I honestly felt he was underplaying the power of your fan base. And we saw it. And I salute that. For me, when people talk about City's history, I'm like, just talk about trophies. I'm like, that's not history. If you're a real football fan, right, every football fan has history, right? A club that's never won any trophies has history, right? Because the history is going to games with your mates. The history is going to games with your parents. It's all of that is history. So it really pisses me off. And I knew your fans would go down there. And look, I'm not going to knock you because United at the moment are looking fucking good. So, but I just really wanted you to. I really wanted you to get one over them. Really, I didn't get scrappy shit football. Just.
Yeah,
probably the same as you, to be fair. But.
You're not the only one. Dax, you're not the only one. We had lots of different fans: Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal. They all wanted us. Even Spurs. They all wanted us to beat Man U and obviously get our sort of first trophy. So it was it was hard for us to take. We didn't turn up the way we wanted to, but as what a lot of fans have said. After the game is that maybe it was just a little bit too early within our program.
I think so.
Maybe with heavy investment in the summer, we can come back and go one better. But
did that surprise you in January?
Interesting one. Interesting one. Like Richie, we've talked about this before about January in the transfer window. Shock for you. I know we've talked about it before, but looking at it right now, good move, bad move.
I know it's a hard one, by the way, because as a City fan that did it all out, right? I respect the way you're doing it massively, right? It's almost like you're skipping the Mark Hughes era and going straight onto the Mancini era, right? And I think you're doing it right. But I always said that if you went into the January in the top 4, your board's going to look at it and go, fuck me, we're about 2 years ahead of the curve. We can have Champions League football next season. And I knew you weren't going to go out and fucking buy Mbappe, right? But I just thought maybe a few more shrewd, clever signings like you've done so far. And I don't know, probably they're being very careful, rightly so, with what's going on with City at the moment. I get it. It just surprised me a little bit. I really thought you'd push on to make sure you nailed that top 4 place.
Yeah. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with Daps' assessment, or do you see it slightly different, Rich?
I agree with the fact that I think we've approached, since they've had the 3 windows, they've approached it completely the right way.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't go out like you did. Obviously, when City got taken over, you can't do an Abramovich like you did at Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot more restrictions that you can't do now, full stop.
And also, it doesn't work though as well. It's worked better for you than it did for us. So.
Yeah, I agree, because you've got, the thing is, like, what you've got to do is, it's like we haven't spent anywhere near the same amount of money as what even Everton have in recent years, and Everton are an absolute shit show for spending like what, $500 million on pretty much, and they're in a worse position than they ever were. So with what we spent, about 300 million, just under that since we've been in charge. So it's like, what you've got to look at that is they've done it shrewdly in the right way. Obviously, last year in January, we needed experienced leaders, we needed experienced Premier League players, and then obviously we got 4 of those, and then obviously we got the jewel of the crown in Bruno Guimaraes as well. So that was like a fantastic signing. And then you look at what we brought in the summer, which I think that the summer, especially when you've got like our record signing Alexander Isak, still hasn't really hit the ground running. He hasn't really
been unlucky, isn't he?
Yeah, he has. You know what I mean? He's been with injury and stuff like that, and for some reason at the moment, obviously we'll see if it's a different situation on Saturday. Eddie Howe's went with tried and tested in Callum Wilson, but we were talking about the other day. We've talked about for the last few weeks. Since the World Cup, he hasn't been the Callum Wilson that we're used to. So,
and do you know what? In the World Cup, I was actually saying, for me in the World Cup, Callum Wilson looked more part of the team and more suited to the England team than Kane did. When I saw Callum Wilson, I thought, do you know what? Like, there was that one moment where he was through on goal, and for a player that hasn't really played for England, hasn't had the chances, for him to be through on goal and decide to square the ball, I was like, that's the type of player you want. That it's not me, it's no, he's in a better position. So, yeah, he has been, because I saw Callum Wilson starting and thought, okay, I get this. This is maybe what he's been waiting for. But, yeah, but that defender you got's good, man. That Botman. Yeah,
Sven Botman is just, we were all over him in our transfer shows last January when obviously we tried to get him then, and obviously Lille played hardball with us and stuff like that. And what the concept, and this is the good thing that we've appreciated, because if they like a player so much, they're prepared to wait. But at the same time, they always said that if the right player became available, they'd pull the trigger on it, which is what they did with Alexander Isak. But that, obviously, there'd been rumours that everyone knew that Eddie Howe liked him as a player, but we just didn't. It was probably something that was going to be for possibly this summer coming up. But obviously, when the figures got quoted what they were going to be, and Newcastle were like, "Do you know what? That's a damn bloody good deal. Let's just pull the trigger and do it." And obviously, that's where we are now with that. So, I think, going back to the most recent window, and I think this has been pretty, it's controversial in a way, because I think if we'd strengthened and brought in, obviously Anthony Gordon came in, and I think it's the fact that we lost who we lost and didn't strengthen in that department as well. I think that's been the main issue, in my opinion, and what Newcastle fans, you let Chris Wood go. Do you know what I mean? Yes, he's been there 12 months, but and
don't talk on Chris Woods to me at the moment, please. You lot might have cost us the league,
But everyone's been saying it was awful business and stuff like that, and to me, it's not. 25 million for someone who, we relegated the team he came from, helped, and that obviously gives Newcastle a cash injection with the amount of money that you get for staying in the Premier League. And then he's been there, he hasn't scored loads, but there's been some important goals that he scored during that time. And then You then sell him.
It made sense to me. It made sense to me at the time because, like, you've got St. Maximin, you had Callum Wilson, you went and got a striker. When you've got Trippier, right, to go and get a target man that you can put a ball on his head, it made sense to me. It was like, this is a plan B. And like I often look at City and think, I mean, now to be fair, we got Haaland again, but through the seasons where we didn't have Haaland, I used to think, I wish we had Zeko still. Just that plan B that Giroud at Arsenal. And Giroud, to be frank, Giroud his whole career, right, is if you've got someone like Trippier, like Trent, like De Bruyne, that really can put the ball on a 2p piece, and then you get a target man, it made sense to me. It was like, especially when you're fighting, but by that point, by the time you bought Chris Wood, were you still fighting relegation?
Yeah.
There we go. It was spot on for me, and proof's in the pudding where you are now. So I think
it is, because if you look at you, as I said, you spend 25 million, you then get a 4 million loan fee for when they took him in January, and then if he played 3 games, the deal was made permanent for an extra 15 million. So technically, we've already had an outlay of 6 million for Chris Wood.
Yeah,
so 6 million
under Vinny, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, so that was fantastic. But I think what the main issue, what Newcastle fans, going back to what you were saying about this window, was about strengthening, is the fact that we lost Chris Wood and we lost John Joe Shelvey. And I think that's obviously both have gone to Forest, and didn't buy any replacements, or even loan someone. Like I mentioned it last week, like obviously Shelvey went, and I understand that they did a fantastic deal, and both of those players wanted to go. But for me, looking at what we've been in before, is you make sure that you've got you think about yourself first as a club. You make sure that you've got someone lined up before you let someone go. Now, obviously, like the Wood went, and that's fair enough. And they thought, obviously, we'll go with Wilson and we'll go with and Isak. And obviously, you've got Gordon who can play anywhere across the front line. But then to let John Joe Shelvey, when you're playing 3 centre midfielders, you've only got 5 centre midfielders in your squad, and then you let Shelvey go and don't replace him. And I think what the annoying thing is that I mentioned last week, and obviously you live in the area, and you look at Christian Eriksen got injured on deadline day. And I'm not saying this is the sort of person we would go for. You go and get Sabitzer on loan for 6 months. You're not forking out an outlay for which affects the FFP, but you've got that covered to not make yourself weaker. So we should have been there where we looked at getting someone in for 6 months until the summer, and that's the concerning thing that we didn't do this window.
It's very similar, actually. And I was thinking, when you said about Shelvey, I was thinking about something that maybe, all right, maybe he's not where Newcastle are going, but passion-wise, in the dressing room, I have no doubt he's a good person to have in the dressing room, right? It's a good person, that fight. And then I think you carried on. It's very similar to how I feel about Zinchenko, right? That we let a fighter go, right? A player that wanted to stay at our club every season, ended up being our starter left-back every season, although he didn't start the season that way. We let him go, and we never, we thought we were going to get Cucurella, but we didn't. So we let Zinchenko go when he was only on 20 grand a week. The passion that we're now seeing at Arsenal, that fight that we're now seeing at Arsenal, and I'm kind of sat here going, look, Ake's doing an amazing job. For me, Ake might be our best player this season. But if Ake gets injured, we are royally fucked at left back, right?
Look, so. We'll get to individual players in a second, because I do want to get some opinions on one or two players, including Ake, and I'm inclined to agree with you how well it's been. But look, from your perspective, well, just before we get onto Man City's perspective, Eddie Howe's come out fighting. He's made his comments there. Obviously, the pain of watching Man United lift that trophy, obviously absorbing everything that they've experienced. He said it fires him up to ensure that they are successful in the future, and that's exactly what we want to hear moving forward as a set of fans. That is for sure. So, fingers crossed. It makes a fruitful end of the season, and we're able to kick back on and produce the sort of form we did in the first half of the season. That's what we want more than anything. But your conversation there with regards to the investment for Newcastle, I'm inclined to agree. I thought we should have, in my opinion, signed a couple of players in January. But there's a lot of factors that can play into that, and you both have touched on those factors as well. But look, here's the league table as it stands. We've got
2 games in hand now.
Yeah, you've got as it stands after the last set of Premier League games yesterday. So this is how it stands. Man City second place, 55 points, 5 points behind Arsenal. You've got Man United that are behind them in third, the game in hand. Obviously, you've got Newcastle there in fifth, but we've got 2 games in hand on Tottenham. We've got 1 game in hand on Man United. We've now got a game in hand on Liverpool, and Liverpool are, a couple of points behind us. So it's not all doom and gloom compared to how it looked for Newcastle fans before or after the Liverpool game, when there was a lot of talk of, they win their game in hand, they're 3 points behind us, they're going to catch us, blah, blah, blah. They are 2 points behind us. They dropped points against Crystal Palace. It took late goals from Van Dijk and Salah to beat Wolves. It's still all open, in my opinion, for that race for top 4. But there's a number in the chat, and quite rightly, that have mentioned that actually, from a Newcastle perspective, just finishing anywhere in Europe is a positive. But just going back to that, second place for you guys, I had you down after you beat Arsenal, Daps, that you were odds on then to win the league. How are you feeling right now? Are you still confident that you can go and win the league, or do you think that with the same games played, 1 less, 5 points behind, do you think you've had your chance to close the gap? You were top at one point on the same points, and now you're not. Do you think that's a gap too far, or is there still another run left in you?
I think if this was our first rodeo, then I'd be saying, yeah, do you know what? They've opened the door to us a few times and we haven't snuck in. Do you know what? It's got to a point where all season I've been saying, look, we know that City start seasons slowly. We know that when it gets to February, March, City kick on. We know how to do this. And I'm not discrediting Arsenal, by the way. I think Arsenal have been sensational. I think Arsenal have been as good as Liverpool the first time Liverpool tried to compete with us, right? It has now got to a point, though, where all I can say is Arsenal's to lose, right? As far as with us, do I think Man City can win the league? Do I think Man City can win the FA Cup? Do I think Man City can win the Champions League? I think we have it in us to win all 3. But the very simple thing is, and what I mean by that is, often when I get asked about other teams buying players, I'm like, look, if we are our best, I honestly think we can beat anyone, right? But here's the thing now. If we're not at our best, I have no issues with saying, well, you know what? We're not going to win nothing. And let me be clear, nothing, right? Because I can't talk about winning the Champions League if I think we're going to drop more points in the Premier League, right? I can't. I'm not entitled. We're not an entitled fan base. And when I see the City fan bases on Twitter that are entitled, I don't like it. We're not entitled, right? Since about October, November, we haven't gone on more than a 2-game winning run. So turning up against Arsenal, then beating Villa, great. But then we drop points to Forest, right? Yeah. Now, I'm not discrediting Forest. 5 months unbeaten at home. But the City that win leagues go and get jobs done, right? When Arsenal drop points to Everton and we face Tottenham away, our hardest game of the season, admittedly. But if we're the City that win leagues, we go and get the job done. And we haven't, right? So now we're in this same predicament again. We've just beat Bournemouth. We've just beat Bristol. 2 games, 2 wins on the bounce. And again, I'm not discrediting Newcastle. Newcastle at home, I knew Newcastle away was going to be a hard game this season. Newcastle at home, especially the fact that you now need to get back your momentum, is going to be a fucking hard game, right? But if we are the City of old that can win the league and can win the Champions League and can win the FA Cup, we have to get 3 points. If not, it's not good enough. And that's not me saying I want this player out, that player out. It is what it is. When we dropped points to Everton on New Year's Eve, I went for a walk around Manchester, remembered what it was like being young and celebrating Man United not winning the league to Blackburn, and think, do you know what? If we come second, No problem. We go again next season. Like, and this is one thing to you guys. Like, you're going to be there. You know you're going to be there sooner or later. You can't take things like that. It's a guarantee. And this season, I think Pep struggled to motivate some players. I would never use the term transition. I think that's an excuse. But maybe Pep's learning the best way to play now with a striker instead of a false nine. And it is what it is. Look. If we beat Newcastle, if we beat Crystal Palace, all of a sudden, I'm going to sit here and say we're going to win the league. At the moment, what I would say is I think we can win the league based on the players. The players have to desire it. If they don't, we're not going to win it.
Richie, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Man City in isolation? Do you think they can still win the league? Do you think they're going to, or that's just saying, it's not guaranteed to win the league, and it wouldn't be a surprise if they didn't. But what are your thoughts? Do you still think there's another run in this race before the end of the season?
I've just been having a look to the fixtures, and obviously after this weekend, obviously I want a positive result for Newcastle, and I think the one bad thing is for Man City on that sort of thing, because I'll be honest, when I was a kid, Man City were my second team because I was a huge Oasis fan. I had the Kappa kit, which I think a lot of people did if they were an Oasis fan. And so I've got an affinity there for you, obviously, on that. And obviously, I want Newcastle to get something this weekend. But after that, I still want you to go on and push for the league sort of thing on that front. And I've just been looking at the fixtures. Arsenal have got a spell from the end of April into May, which is it's an interesting little set of fixtures that they've got. Because they've got to go to the Etihad straight away. And then after that, they've got Chelsea at home. Now, obviously, Chelsea aren't the Chelsea that we know, but by the end of April, could there be a form of change? Could all these, tens of players start to gel and stuff like that? And obviously to London derby against, two of the three big six, supposed three big six in London. So there's obviously a rivalry there as well. And Chelsea fans won't be like an Arsenal to do well. So there's a potential. Then they've got to come to Newcastle. They've got to come here. And when they came up here last year,
that favour, didn't you? You can do that favour.
when they came up here last year, they shit themselves. They really did.
Hold on. That was a game. That was a game where they fucking lost top four, wasn't it?
Yeah. We beat them 2-0.
Oh, that's a good sign. Thank you.
Yeah, they absolutely shit themselves. They didn't know what hit them. They just couldn't cope with the atmosphere, what was going on. And Newcastle played them off the park. It was, you're probably looking at a team that was facing relegation the way that Arsenal played that day. So the thing is that this is something that Arsenal they haven't been in a situation in a long, long time. They haven't got that experience in this squad. Well, probably, with Zinchenko and possibly Gabriel Jesus and potentially Jorginho of being title winners, really. So you've got, they're having that extra pressure on you where you've got a team who's, they've won the league. God knows how many times City have won the league in the last decade. You know what I mean? And you've got a team full of winners there, and Pep knows how to get his team prepared going forward, and he knows what it'll take, and he's done it before, and he'll do it again. And then after the Newcastle game, they've got the tricky game of Brighton at home. And the last time that Brighton went down there, they beat Arsenal in. Because obviously we all saw on the All or Nothing documentary as well.
Yeah.
They turned up and beat them there. And Brighton aren't a mug. They're not a mug of a tie. So
we've got Brighton away.
Yeah. See, we've got Brighton at home, but obviously we've talked about using. That's a difficult 4-week spell for Arsenal, for me. And I think that's what will decide. Obviously, if Man City do Arsenal at the Etihad, that's a lot of pressure is going to be put on.
We will.
Yeah, I believe you will as well.
What I worry about is Brighton and Brentford away. I look at them two and think, ooh.
Yeah. They're the type of teams that
You're
turn it
spot on with what you just said there about Pep, and about the squad and about the players that know how to do it. And that's why I still think we can do it. But some of the most frustrating moments this season, like Tottenham at home, the first half when we were 2-0 down, that was so frustrating, right? And some of the City fans did boo the team, right? Some people have said we were booing the ref. I'll be honest with you, I don't agree, right? It was a Thursday night. We'd rushed to the ground, right? We'd paid more than usual, right? For some reason, the club had got hold of some tickets off of season ticket holders, whacked them on a bigger price. That was a bit of a bee in a bonnet. We looked all right, but then we conceded 2 goals in the space of 5 minutes just before half time. And what I looked for at that point, because I was already on to Gundogan as our captain, say, great player, but for me, Gundogan and De Bruyne aren't leaders, right? And I was looking for Gundogan when Tottenham scored the first. Every City player, head down, no one speaking. Second goal, they scored 2 minutes later, same thing. And when, as a fan, you've seen this group of players perform so well, run their heart out, chase every single ball, to see them go down 2-0 like that, it's frustrating because you're like, you're not the team that I'm believing in that can do what you do every season at the moment. And this isn't because you're not good enough, because we've seen you're good enough. It's because for whatever reason, you haven't got the desire you had last season. And that is what all I want to see. Like, and I think Foden is going to bring it back for me. Foden already coming back in. He's a player. He gets it. He gets it. And I think we need these players to step up and be counted. Do you know, on Saturday, this is our first home game in 6 games. We've had 19 in 19 days, we've had 5 away games. So it kind of feels refreshing to be coming home.
Yeah.
But 12:30 kickoff.
Yeah. Well, one of the last 12:30 kickoffs that you played in was against Brentford, and Brentford beat you guys. They beat you guys, and to be fair, they deserved to beat you. They played really well that day. They made it very difficult.
We could have played for an hour and 80 minutes. We wouldn't have scored a second.
Yeah. So look, we're gonna Newcastle fans are gonna keep 20 sort of past records or superstitions with regards to fixtures or anything that's going to help us along. But
Pete, just wanted to, because obviously you mentioned Brentford there, the Etihad. Michael Pormar made a good point just for Daps's knowledge that when they've got to go down to Brentford, they might not have Toney by then, because obviously the developments have obviously got to that. And there's rumours that it could be a 6-month ban from all sorts of football. Now, the rumours are that if that is proven, they're going to take it ASAP, so that the majority of the months will be taken over the summer transfer window. So you'll hopefully be ready for the obviously next season.
I asked the question. I was like, it's clear that he did these bets. He's admitted to the vast majority of them. Why hasn't the ban already come in place now? And I honestly believe that he'll see out the season with Brentford, and then they'll do it where his ban starts during the summer months.
They will. I once faced a driving ban for speeding, and we knew I was going to get banned. So my lawyer said to me, "Have you got any holidays booked or anything like that?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going away for 2 weeks." And he said, "Cool, we'll get the first court case adjourned, second one." So they're doing one. Sorry, can I just check? I think I found one.
Steve Howie. He's after the Steve Howie.
No, it wasn't Steve Howie. It wasn't Steve Howie. It was another player that played for you.
Oh, was it? Oh, Warren Barton.
That's who it was. Warren Barton. I just saw him on the carpet.
I love how we're just talking Newcastle Man City, and he's still looking. He's still looking.
My house isn't a mess, I promise you.
I love it. I think it's great. But no, spot on. I think that Toney debacle will drag on, and I think what you just said, Richie, you put Michael's comment up. I think that's right. I think that could play a massive part, not only in Man City's game with them, but ours, because we've got to go to their place. They're the same team. They're not the same team without him. But
see, the funny thing about the Toney, obviously, I know it's getting us a little distracted there, but the interesting thing about the Toney thing is, if he's admitted to some of the cases, surely that means a ban comes in automatically because he's admitted to it, and then any cases that are found out afterwards can be added to the length of the ban that is already undergoing. That's how I would do it, rather than go through every single case and then ban him. He's already admitted to some of them.
Yeah. Apparently, he's from some quarters have said he's admitted to the vast majority. So he's clearly guilty of some degree. At that point, he should be banned. But Look, Daps, you were talking about. Look, Michael Palmer's come back with another great point here as well. Is you talked about that desire, that want. Can we go again? Can we get 3 in a row?
This sounds awful, doesn't it? 3 in a fucking row. Jesus Christ.
Do you think there's an element to this? And Michael Palmer's got a question for Daps. Would you sacrifice another league to win the Champions League? Follow on from this, would a Champions League win lead to Pep staying?
Pep's just signed a new contract anyway.
But what the point that I was making is, or was going to make, is rather than would you sacrifice? Do you think that's what Pep is almost doing this season, prioritising the Champions League to get that Champions League in to the club at Man City ahead of?
I think that would be the risk. Right. Other fan bases are always onto us about we need to win the Champions League, but those same fan bases are the ones that hang themselves so high on how difficult it is to win the Champions League, which I agree with, by the way. I was at the Bernabeu. Heritage is not a joke in the Champions League. I honestly believe it. Winning the Premier League is about 38 games. In the Champions League, if you've done it before, I think Liverpool against any other team last season would have won that final. But when you come against a team that's won 14 Champions Leagues, their heritage is just better than yours, right? And so I think it's so dangerous because the Champions League is not easy. So to base your whole... but one thing I will say is, which... Let's put Pep out of this and talk players. I do think there's some players in this City team that aren't City fans. They're not English. They're over in the Premier League. They've won the Premier League 4 times. They've won the Carabao Cup. They've won the FA Cup. They've broke records, right? But they haven't won the Champions League. So... those players are the exact players that I was looking at last week in Germany, expecting to see a different level of performance. Because I was thinking, not Pep, but these players, the one thing, and do you know what? In fact, one of them is even English, Kyle Walker. He's won everything, but he hasn't won a Champions League. So I was expecting to see a next level of desire last week in Germany. Now, first half, great. Second half, no. And then it's like, no, this isn't about the tournament, because if it was, I would have seen the levels go up in that second half against Leipzig, and it didn't. It's just look, we're not Liverpool. Our crisis is not like that. We're not Chelsea. Our crisis isn't like that. But there are things wrong with City at the moment. There's definitely tension we haven't seen in that dressing room for some time. Like there is. You've seen it. Cancelo being loaned out. That. For me, that was because Pep knew Bernardo Silva needed Cancelo as far away as possible, because I think he was in Bernardo Silva's ear. But it's just slightly different to previous seasons. So I think that's what it's down to. I think we need a refresh. Even if we win the league this season, even if we win the Champions League this season, in the summer, we need a refresh. I'm not saying we need 11 new players, but we need some new hunger, some new desire in there. We do. 100%.
Well, you've brought one main man in that's made, in my opinion, and I think everyone else can. I think it's very difficult to argue that he's made a difference. But this man has come in to your team. I find it really hard when the guy is an absolute goal machine, but yet he's still being questioned. I mean, and I'm talking from the outside looking in here. From as a Newcastle fan looking at. The questions that are pointed at Haaland, not necessarily always from Man City fans, but just people in the media in general. How good has this guy been? And there's a question in the chat. I can't remember who it's from.
I've started for you because I know you're going to ask this thing. Yeah. I'll get it up for you, mate.
But just to add to this guy, how good has this guy been for you as a player? And it says there's a rumor that Haaland isn't happy. We can obviously make him very happy at our place, but what is your opinion on Erling Haaland and what he's done at Man City so far this season?
Do you know, right? On the last show I was on before this, we spoke on the fact that a lot of people are saying a City is a worse team with Haaland, right? And then after that, the next question was, what would City do if Haaland gets injured? And I thought, well, if you're telling me that City are a worse team with Haaland, right? Well, surely if Haaland gets injured and we revert back to City of last season, playing with a false nine, we'll be a better City, right? But it's no, because that doesn't suit the agenda. Now, for me, we've been domestically dominant playing a false nine, playing with an extra midfielder. But the board has made the decision. I don't think it was Pep. I think the board has made the decision. Do you know what? For commercial reasons, for the fact that we do need to replace Aguero, for the fact that we do need that clutch player that scores goals in cup competitions, the Champions League, we're going to get Haaland. I don't think any given Sunday, if Pep got asked what position do you want, he would say an out-and-out number 9. He'd say another midfielder, right? But Pep is having to work out how to play with the number 9. And that's not Haaland's fault. Pep's trying to work out the best way to use a number 9 and you look at certain games, there are games where you could say, do you know what, we didn't look as fluid. But there's probably more games you'd look at and go, without Haaland, City didn't win that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I suppose just switch it back around to your Daps, because obviously Man City were linked with Harry Kane. And to be fair, Harry Kane doesn't really, yes, he's a number 9, but he comes very deep, doesn't he, a lot of the time? Do you think that's one of the reasons why Pep wanted to look at Harry Kane, because he can sort of go deeper and be that false number 9, number 10 goal? But the board perhaps he went for Haaland because you're getting one of these. It's not just that though. It's one of these what you would call a marquee signing, isn't it? But technically you weren't paying a marquee price from though, were you?
Yeah, I think that. But then I think the other thing, to be honest with you, is City's board. We like doing things that are easy, right? Release clauses, we love them. We don't like being in this back and forth in the media with other clubs getting involved. With Kane, we offered an amount. The minute Levy was playing that hardball, we stepped away. It's happened with Napoli, with Koulibaly several years ago. When it started happening with the back and forth, do you know what, we'll leave. With Grealish, it was a release clause and done. With Haaland, it was a release clause and done, right? But I think, personally, what I just said is, with Haaland, is that what we've gone and got there is we've gone and got a player that, yes, marquee, but also clutch player, big games, scores goals, right? Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm waiting for Kane to do that. I'm still waiting for Kane to do that. Like, for me, Kane is an amazing footballer. Unbelievable, right? But there are times where, as a player, if you back yourself, you make difficult decisions, right? And you stand by them. Kane wanted to go City. Within a week, he fucking backed out and goes, no, I'll be back in training, right? Now, for me, this summer is a massive, massive moment for Kane. As a man, if I shook someone's hand and they've told me something, and then they've gone back on it, made me look slightly silly, stopped me from achieving what I want to achieve, and also my brother, who's my agent, made him look a bit silly. Kane is on a year left on his contract this summer, right? If he decides to stay at Tottenham, I really question how much he believes in himself. Because at this point, he needs to be... And I'll be honest, if I was Kane, I'd go Newcastle. I'd go Man United. I think Newcastle will win a trophy before Tottenham, by the way.
Yeah, I do as well.
And there's a slight little niceness that if he went to Newcastle, continued scoring goals, and broke this man's record at the same club, it would be quite interesting, wouldn't it, as well? So, I get the Kane thing. I think Kane would suit us, but
not now. Now you've got Haaland. I don't think you need him.
It was either or, wasn't it? He couldn't. Both doesn't suit the system. It was either Kane or Haaland.
Yeah, I think as well that as a fan, right, what I really don't like is when people try and use certain elements of the way the club acts to downplay. Like, and for me, if you support your club, you support your club. Even if you don't like the board, unfortunately, you have to support them because they are part of the club. It can be difficult, but That is what it is. If your squad, when people say things like, "Oh, you know, but we were playing our B team," well, that means your squad isn't good enough. It's still part of your club, and our club has made the decision that for us to grow as a club, we had to get a marquee signing, and that was Haaland. So we back it. Haaland's doing well, man. He's scored 27 fucking league goals already.
There was another question in the chat very quickly before I come on to another slight point before we move on to the next section, is that how many Premier League goals do you think he can score? I think, if I'm right, I think in the record's 34. The highest in a Premier League season, whether it was the old version where there was more teams in the league or not. How many goals do you think he will score in the Premier League before the end of the season?
He's got 27 in the Premier League now. I mean, so he's got 27 in the Premier League. I can't even remember what it is in all comps now. It's 34 or 35, I think. Yeah. I'm not going to focus on the other ones because that's all dependent on how far you go. Just in the Premier League.
I'll throw a ballpark in there. Do you think you can get to 40 Premier League goals?
No.
You don't think he'll score 40?
No, I don't. I think at the moment, how many games are we on so far? 30?
I think you've got, you've played 24, 25, so you've got, 13 games left?
Yeah.
So it's, even if he was to score a goal every other game, that's 7, so that would put him on 34. That's a goal every other game.
But I think he's going to get about 36.
Okay. So you think he'll break the record, but not...
I think he'll break the record, yeah. I think I'd be disappointed now if he doesn't break the record. But, players don't score every game. They don't, right? But can Haaland score 3 in a game? Most definitely can. I think he's already broke the record for the most hat-tricks in a season. So it's hard. 40 would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be lovely.
See, that's the thing. George Flies put 40 there.
40 is a nice number, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a goal a game going for the rest of the season. That isn't it?
It's because he scores more than one goal in a game. Like in games,
that's the key.
Not in every game, but
no, because then Newcastle, I can't see him scoring 2 against you. To be honest with you, so
yeah, I hope he don't score any. I don't think you know what. even better than that, Daps. I hope he's rested. I hope he's rested.
He's not rested. He was rested midweek, bro.
Yeah, well, give him a week. That's have a word with Pep. Give him a week. Give him an extra few days rest. He deserves.
Just tell him the number 9's not working. You want to go back to a false 9 for this weekend.
What I'll throw out there to you very, very quickly, because we've talked about various different things. I want to talk about the game. This man, Alvarez, top player for me, unbelievable player. There has been some noises that he's not happy.
Yeah, do you know what, bro?
And you know what? Interestingly, because of this show tonight, a lot of people are saying, why not come to Newcastle if you're not happy?
Bro, I'll be honest with you. So, I have said from the start that I think this season, Alvarez will be happy playing second fiddle. First season, to be fair, I think he's probably happy for the rest because you've got to remember, he actually joined us in the summer, pre-season, and went on the tour, fresh off of the back of finishing the Brazilian. He hasn't stopped playing, ultimately, so he does need a rest, but I think he'll be happy with that. But I did say last week against Leipzig that as a World Cup winner, you'll be fine to be sat on the bench. He's still played quite a lot of games, by the way. You'd be surprised. But if you're sat on the bench and you're watching your team look like they need something changed and Pep doesn't make any substitutions, at that point, you would be like, hold on, does this manager just not rate me that much? However, to squash all the rumours, the minute I saw it, I knew what it was. Check the outlet that reported it. It's a Barcelona outlet. It's what they were doing all summer about every City player. Alvarez is currently in negotiations to extend his contract, which has still got 4 years left on it, by a further 2 years. So it's Barcelona probably seeing that he didn't get subbed on against Leipzig and thinking, let's rattle him, because we have to be clear. Look, I actually think Alvarez will stay at City longer than Haaland will.
I agree. I agree.
But at the same time, he is a World Cup winner. And Barcelona, Real Madrid and many other European teams will come sniffing for him. So we can't just think that he's going to be happy sitting on the bench forever. We can't. So I actually think, and here's a mad stat: him and Haaland have started together 6 times. In 5 of them, they've both scored and we've won. In 1 game, neither of them scored. That was Tottenham away. But in the other 5, they started together. And you've seen my lineup. I want to see Alvarez and Haaland starting together. I think if you give a defence just Haaland think about, if you give a defence Haaland think about, Alvarez think about, Foden think about, it's starting to look like City when we had Aguero, Sane, Sterling, with multiple things for defenders to think about. And I think it then all of a sudden means that defences can't just focus on marking Haaland out of the box, so out the game.
The one thing I will say, and we'll get to it in just a second, we have slightly ran over with time. So
what happens when I come on? Sorry, I talked to you.
No. You know what? It's been a great chat about lots of other different aspects of the game. But look, we are going to talk about the game a little bit, and then I'm going to come to your lineup because I am genuinely worried if that is going to be the lineup on Saturday. I have to be honest. But of course, as we build up to games, there's no better way of building up to the game than a few stats thrown in there.
You just put Halle Berry on the screen. What are you trying to do to me? You tried to hypnotise me first with the curly thing, right? And then I see Halle Berry.
You do it every
Eddie Howe
time.
should do that Eddie Howe needs to do that to Haaland on Saturday.
Look, we're pretty sure that Newcastle and Eddie Howe watch Loaded Man NUFC. So as Daps has just said, Eddie, you know what to do, ready for Saturday. But of course, as always, he appears. Keith, Double O Stato, how are you, my man? How are things? And what stats have you got for us this week?
I've got a load of stats for you this week. I've got a lot of head-to-head stats. I've got some stats on both players, sets of players, and some manager stats, some general stats as well to round off. Quite a few to get through here, but strap yourselves in because this is a fixture I always dread every season. Manchester City versus Newcastle at the Etihad is always a game I like to get out of the way early doors, and you'll find out why. Newcastle's record against Man City in the Premier League since 1993-94, played 45, won 8, drawn 9, and lost 28. And a lot of those losses have come in the last 18 years, it's fair to say. Number of goals as well in the Premier League, 138, 95 for City, 43 for Newcastle. And City also got the better defensive record with 20 clean sheets to Newcastle's 8 in head-to-head fixtures in the league. Newcastle have only won 1 of their past 30 Premier League games against Man City, 5 draws and 24 defeats, the 2-1 win coming in January 2019. Just after Miguel Almiron had signed for the club. Newcastle have not beaten Man City away in Manchester for 23 years when Alan Shearer got the winner 1-0 at the old Main Road Stadium. Erling Haaland's father, Alfie Ingle Haaland, was actually playing for Man City that day. Man City as well, they've won 5 of the last 6 league games against Newcastle with a minimum of 3 goals in each of the last 4 games. Callum Wilson, his record against Man City, he's got 2 goals and 1 assist in 8 games against Man City in games he's played. Erling Haaland, who've already just touched on their 27 Premier League games, goals already this season, the most by a Manchester City player this season. If he's ruining a Man City's team are ruining their season, God, I wish that we had those sort of problems this season. I think that might be a combined Newcastle. You'd struggle to get as many Newcastle players to get to 27 goals this season combined let alone one player in Alfie Haaland. And the next stat as well, Kevin De Bruyne, he tops the assists, the goal scoring assists already this season with 12 assists this season for
worst season
Manchester
out
City.
Of De Bruyne, by the way. Worst season
exactly.
I've seen out of De Bruyne.
99 problems, but goals and assists aren't one of them for Man City.
Love it.
Goalkeepers as well. Moving on to goalkeepers, Nick Pope with 12 clean sheets in 23 for Newcastle. Edison as well with 8 clean sheets and 25 for Manchester City this season, and he's only 1 clean sheet away from 100 in the Premier League. So
we've been chasing that a while,
brilliant.
Though. It's been outstanding for quite a few games, to be fair.
You mightn't have that problem against Newcastle with 2 goals and 7 for Newcastle and 3 goals and 7 for Newcastle. That's how many they've scored recently. Moving on to the managers, Pep Guardiola, his record against Newcastle, 12 games managed, 9 won, drawn 1, and he's only lost the 1 game, and that was the 2-1 at St. James's in 2020. And Eddie Howe, it has to be stressed, most of these games as well were when he was Bournemouth manager. 13 managed, only 1 draw and 12 defeats in games against that Manchester City. Now, some general stats here. Man City have won their past 13 Premier League home games against Newcastle in a run that goes back to 2007. Now, only Everton have managed more against a single opponent. They've won 14 home league games against Fulham. And Newcastle are looking to avoid defeat, however, in Premier League games against Man City for the first time since 2004-05, in which season they got a draw and they got a 1-0 win. I think Michael Owen got the winner that day as well at St. James's.
Michael Owen and winners against us.
Exactly. You know, he's not very popular up here in these parts, Michael Owen.
Let's see about him the better. Let's be honest.
The Manchester City have scored in their past 28 Premier League games against Newcastle, and that's the joint longest run of a Premier League against a team has against any opponent, and a run that goes back as well, and it's tied with Man United against Leicester, Pete's home team there. Man City,
not my team.
hometown local club, but not the team Pete supports, as he rightly says. Man City currently have the best home record in the Premier League this season. Now, this is an incredible feat. 31 points from 36 available. The only reverses coming: a 2-1 loss to Brentford and a 1-1 draw against Everton in the Premier League. So they've scored in every home game as well this season. And they have scored 41 in total league goals so far this season. And that's the most of any of the top 4 English top flight divisions. So an incredible record for Man City at home. But surprisingly, and I'd just like to counter some of the points earlier of what has been raised earlier in the show about the media saying about the attack, and it all being through Haaland. Well, really, a lot of it is defensively, where possibly things have gone wrong for City this year. With this, surprisingly here, 3 clean sheets in their last 16 in particular games. And basically those games against Wolves, Chelsea and Leicester. So that's where it's going wrong recently for Manchester City. And I'll just round off here with a happier stat as well for Newcastle. Newcastle are one of only 3 sides, along with Brentford and Nottingham Forest, yet to win a Premier League game without conceding first this season. So a lot of Newcastle's wins, most of Newcastle's wins have been when they've been on the front foot, they've got a goal ahead. They're yet to do it when they've went conceded. And that rounds off tonight's stats.
You know what? Keith, as always, double A Stato. I appreciate the stats. Absolute top stuff. And equally, the comments in the chat regarding the stats do make me laugh. You've got you not only just double A Stato, you've also been named Dr. Doom.
There's a lot of love in the chat. Is that tonight? There's
a couple of others in there. A couple of other Grim Reaper.
I can't sugarcoat Newcastle, but Man City versus Newcastle. Maybe I could sugarcoat Newcastle versus Man City at St James's, but at the Etihad, it's a tough one.
Do you know the maddest stat though? And it is a right stat, but the one about City, because I saw it the other day that we've got the best home form this season. But I can tell you, going to games is baffling. Like, we've been really bad at home this season. Like, I can tell you, we beat Brighton 3-1. We were awful. Brentford game, the Everton game. There's been a lot of games where we've looked very... The thing with City is where we're struggling is getting that second goal. Because we are so... With Pep, I just explained this earlier on an Arsenal channel. What Pep's doing this season is to try and make up for the fact we haven't got a false nine and we're now playing with one less in midfield. He's inverting our fullbacks, right? And I don't mean playing our fullbacks further forward. He's actually moving them into the middle of the pitch. Now, if you're Man City, and a lot of this season we've had Laporte out, Stones out, Diaz out, right? We always, every season, the one place you can really maybe get at City is on the counter. So if you play against City, hit them on the counter in the last 20, and they've inverted their fullback, so ultimately they've got two at the back. And that's where we've been hit so many times. Brentford was spot on. The Brentford game, we scored one goal early doors, but we weren't scoring a second. Now, and this is what I'd say to Newcastle, because this is where you lot are quite good. If you can, even if we score, if you stop us from getting that second goal, don't be surprised if you hit us on the counter. Now, against you, at your gaff, we went 1-0 up. And then Walker got injured, didn't he?
Yeah.
And for me, that was it. Because then Newcastle just tore us apart on the counter. You just tore those 3 goals.
To be fair, Dabs, ESM had already torn Walker one. I just don't think Walker fancied the rest of the game.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Do you know, it's like who was it? Varane, when we played United and beat him 6-3, and Varane got an injury, and just like it was like, really? But no, I think that game, I actually knew that game was going to happen, because I felt at the time it was a different Newcastle. And it was Newcastle, not to now, but to last season, season before that. There was a Newcastle. It was the first game where you lot were like, let's show these big boys that we are here now, and that this is St James's Park, and it's fucking loud, and we're not here to kind of take part. We're here to win it. And I think that's exactly what we saw. I think Newcastle are the type of team that can get a result against City at the moment, to be honest with you. You defend very well, and you can hit at pace. So
you're right. In my mind, it's all about what type of Newcastle United comes out in. And I hope you're okay for a little bit of time, Dax, because I just want to have a look.
Yeah, I've got another show at 9, but till then. But can I just nip to the little boys' room? Really?
Go for it. So I'm gonna throw up the team sheet in just a second. But I'll wait for Daps to come back. We've answered a number of questions in the chat.
Pete, I was going to bring that Premier League goal scorer record up before, because obviously that was something we were talking about. About Haaland, it is as Keith put in our fantastic private chat, that both Andy Cole and Alan Shearer scored 34 Premier League goals in a season. However, that was a 42-game season. Obviously, now we're in a 38-game season. The record for a 38-game season was done by Mo Salah, which was 32.
So
put it that way. If you look at Haaland gets what? 1 and 2. If we said 7, that's technically a new record on a better ratio than what the 2 records are. So that would be 34 in 38.
Ronaldo as well got 31 and 34 in the 2007-2008 treble winning season.
You'd be absolutely shocked if Haaland doesn't smash that record, like with the goals he's scored and how quickly he's done it. The only thing that I would say about Haaland is if Pep Guardiola starts to rest him because the games come thick and fast. So he starts to rest him in some Premier League games to make sure he's available for the Champions League games. That's the only thing that I can see that may hamper the fact that he doesn't score the goals expected. But I do think that he will.
I just heard you say Andy Cole. I forgot he played for you as well.
Oh, he was the reason I started supporting Newcastle. He was unbelievable. Really? Yeah. My first game ever watching Newcastle was against Leicester. They won 7-1. And he tore Leicester apart that day. And yeah, I was hooked ever since.
Great player. What a goal scorer he was as well.
He was brilliant. Honestly, I was in bits when he signed for Man United.
Keith, I've got a fantastic question for you. You can look up for us because obviously we talked about it. Jolly Tune for Life wants to know how many games did Shearer play that season when he scored 34?
So that was the excellent question. That was the 94-95, wasn't it?
Yeah.
94-95 season. I believe he was at Blackburn as well, the year that Blackburn won the title. So that was the old 40. Was that the last 42 game season, wasn't it? Because they changed it afterwards. I would say that Alan Shearer that year, he probably played possibly even the full. I don't even think he was injured that year, so he could have been in every other game, was he? Was he?
I'll have a look as well.
Yeah, but whilst we're doing that, we're going to look at the team lineup. So I'm going to come to Daps because he's got a fancy lineup pick that he's put on here, and I put it on the screen. So NeverAFoul lineup for Man City there, and as quite rightly Daps, you talked about it. It looks like you boys are going for it because you've got every attacking player you could possibly think of, bar Mahrez and Grealish on the pitch. You've got Haaland up top with Alvarez. You've got De Bruyne on the right. You've got Foden on the left. Bernardo Silva and Rodri in the middle. Almost like Bernardo Silva is more of an attacking centre midfielder. Ake on the left. Diaz and Akanji on the right of the defence. Interestingly, though, you've gone Lewis. And look, you talked about it just a second ago about Kyle Walker and when he went off against Newcastle at St. James's Park, that Man City weren't the same type of team. But you've gone with Lewis instead of Kyle Walker. And look, just with that, I'll bring up, as we always like to do, the tactics board, which I've tried to recreate your lineup here. So just talk us through your lineup. I hope you positioned them in the right place. If I'm not, please let me know.
No, sorry, I've just cut myself. I don't know what on.
What's going on?
Weird. The most bizarre place as well. Anyway, the reason why I've gone, do you know what, right? As content creators, it's funny, I was having this conversation again with the Arsenal fan earlier, that sometimes as content creators, people are more bothered about being right than their actual fucking team, and it does my nutting. Right? I'd rather be wrong the whole season, and I don't, and be my channel do rubbish, right? Because no one cares, because we're just like winning every game. I'd rather, or even if we're losing every game, but just leave us alone ultimately. But with Walker, it's one where I have to accept maybe that I've been saying all season, to win the league, we need Walker back at his best.
Right.
And that's because I think Walker has potentially been Pep's best signing at City over the 6 years.
Wow.
He came in, he transformed our defence. He's a rare gem from Tottenham that actually has a winning mentality, a bit like Modric. But this season, and I've even tracked the fact that over the last 4 years, every season he's going down by 4 or 5 games. He's playing 4 or 5 games less. So his drop-off isn't noticeable. Like, oh my God, Walker's, he's coming of age and he's playing less games. But it's 4 or 5 games for the last, which 20 games over 4 seasons. It's a big drop-off. But I've said for City to win the league this season, we need not our informed players, we need our best players in form, like Walker. But away at Leipzig, I watched Walker, and it's kind of sad because I always say I don't like watching some of our best players drop off, but I kind of realised going forward, Walker offers nothing at all, nothing whatsoever. His delivery into the box has never been that great, but Walker makes up for that with his overlaps or underlaps that kind of scramble defences a little bit, and his insurance policy of his pace getting back, massive. But it's now at a point where the way we're playing with that lack of a midfielder because of Haaland, we need a player that can come into midfield and offer something. And that's not Walker anymore, unfortunately. It is Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis comes into midfield and plays alongside Rodri like another central midfielder. Now, this game was a hard one because of the fact of how you play. That I was thinking, maybe this game we go with Walker. But I've just thought, no. It has to be based on the fact that, do you know what? Rico Lewis has been good for us this season, and I'll just stick with him now. It makes sense because with this back four, what you see right there is a back four. But the minute we get the ball, that's a back three.
Yeah.
Possibly even a back two, because Lewis will drop in and play alongside Rodri. And Ake, who, for me, I've said he's been our best player this season.
Is he talking like this? Does it turn into a little bit like this during the game?
I mean, when we've got the ball, to be honest, bro, Ake starts doing a Zinchenko and going up the pitch.
Okay, so he's further forward then. So
yeah.
How does it look? Just Lewis?
Akanji and Diaz kind of look. City at its best, what they love to do is slowly work you up the pitch and pin you back, and then sit with kind of Rodri and Lewis kind of in the centre of midfield, offering outlets constantly to the triangles that are working down the wings.
So does it look like this then? Like I've tried to manoeuvre
the
Man City team. So
that's more like it.
The two solid centre backs. You've got Lewis, because you know what? You're absolutely right. From what I've seen from Man City, you do see Lewis play a lot of his game in this inside position.
There was one game at home where I purposely was taking pictures and sending them in a group chat saying, "Look at fucking Lewis's positioning. He's literally playing alongside Rodri like another DM." And that's where we do slightly miss. We miss it's a very difficult one because I do think we miss having a right back because I think to get the best out of Mahrez, he needs an overlap and underlap. But Pep is all about midfield, and the one thing I always say to City fans that maybe question certain things, I say, are you questioning Pep? Because like Grealish is a great example for me. When people kind of say any conversation about what does Grealish bring, my response is, right, do you agree that if you don't do what Pep wants, he'll sub you? Oh, 100%. Right, cool. I agree. Leroy Sané, Pep kept subbing him or not starting him because he wouldn't play the way Pep wanted, right? Yeah. So the fact that Grealish starts so many damn games tells me that he is doing exactly what the manager is asking him to do. Now, is that what the stat padders want him to do? No. Maybe probably makes Keith's job a little bit harder, but he's doing what Pep wants him to do. So, but then the other key in this is Bernardo Silva. That Bernardo Silva, when he plays there, he has kind of like, he's our box to box, he's our energy. That's why he's going to be so difficult to replace because he's everywhere. He's got an engine on him. Now, let me tell you something. This probably won't be the team you see, by the way.
Yeah.
This is my preferred.
This is what you want. This is what you want. Okay, so at this point now, I'll head over to the Newcastle fans. Richie, Keith, I'll come to you. Now, look, this is a different team I put out. There's been one or two changes in there. I don't know. I could have made more. I didn't. But this is not what I think would happen. This is what I would like to see happen for the game against Man City. Now, obviously, there's been a huge question mark whether Wilson or Isak, which one's going to play. I've gone with Isak. Equally, you got Almiron on the bench. I've gone with ASM on the right-hand side on his natural right foot. And I brought Gordon back in. He obviously couldn't play in the cup final, but there's been a lot of talk from Newcastle fans that Gordon, you don't pay 40 million for him and have him sit on the bench. He has to play games at some point. He has to try and prove his worth.
I was going to say, has he played for you much yet?
He's come off the bench here and there. And that's really been his position. But let's face it, but to be honest, and Daps, you probably wouldn't know this, but when Newcastle sign new players, that's what tends to happen. They don't just come straight in. Unless there's an injury. For example, Isak's first game was the game at Anfield because Wilson was injured and we didn't have anyone else, so he had to start. But what Eddie Howe likes to do is bring players in off the bench.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like that way of doing it.
So I've gone with ASM down the right-hand side. I've gone with Gordon on the left. You could easily kind of swap them over. I've stuck with Burn. A lot of people think that Burn's time's up, but I just think the game at the Etihad needs the structure of the back four to be in place. Pope, there was some question marks today about whether Pope would even be starting. Like, is Pope still suspended? But I'm pretty sure. I don't know if any of you guys know.
No, it was only a one match ban.
I thought it was the case. So Pope's back in. Bruno looks like he's fit. Bruno will play, and then I've gone with Willock instead of Longstaff in that midfield, along with Joe Linton further forward, and Bruno to try and kind of just organise that midfield and control the ball. Richie, I'll come to you first. What is your starting lineup? Would you change anything, and why?
I'm going along the same sort of lines as you. I like what you've put out there because I think, defensively we've been pretty solid all season. We've still got the best defensive record in the Premier League and the most clean sheets. So back four for me picks itself. You don't change. Yes, okay, they've conceded a few goals recently, but everyone goes through a bad spell at some point. Do you know what I mean? You look at how many goals we've conceded, and to be fair, 3 of them were against City at St James's in one game. You know what I mean? That was still when our defence was fighting its feet. So they've come a long way since then. So I think it'll be a lot of a much more harder game for them on Saturday. The interesting talk point for obviously really is who's going to be the third centre midfielder, either Willock or Longstaff. Now we know Longstaff has covered the most ground pretty much, I think, more than any player in the Premier League this season. So you're going to get the work rate there on that front. But what you also think about Willock is he fresh? Is he over his knock, or is he still carrying where he might not be able to play the full 90? So for me, Willock or Longstaff, I'm happy with either of the ones that comes in there, if I'm honest with you. Now, the front three, obviously, this is the main talking point, and, for Newcastle fans, it's because, when we were banging goals in before the World Cup, we haven't been since the World Cup, and this is why there's so much talk about it. ASM, obviously, you look at the way he played against Man City at St James's. It was probably his best game ever in a black and white shirt. He tore you a new one. Do you know what I mean? And
he made me change my opinion on him.
Yeah. One game shouldn't change an opinion on him because we think he's a fantastic player. But to be able to do it, well, I think we've discussed this in recent weeks. He's probably had 2 performances like that this season. That's the issue. It's consistency with ASM. But the thing is, to make an England right back look like a League 2 player, it says a lot realistically. Do you know what I mean? Because Kyle Walker that day looked completely out of his depth against ASM. I agree. I think Isak needs to play through the middle, and I'd like Gordon to be given a shot. I don't know which way round. If you were to go with that lineup where ASM and Gordon will be on the right flank, the reason this is a debate is because obviously we know Trippier likes to get forward. Yeah. And then the problem playing ASM on the right is you don't get much covering. So that could be, potential danger area for Man City when going forward and develop down that left-hand side. Whereas if you keep them on the left, you've still got Joe Linton that comes across from the centre and covers a little bit, but also you've got Bruno who tends to stay back and doesn't press on as much as Trippier. But I agree, Pete, and we've discussed this umpteen times this season. ASM looks so much more dangerous when he's fast. He gets to the byline and puts the ball in. If he was to go and play him on the right, that's when you have the argument about putting Wilson in, because obviously with Wilson, he needs to be running across the defender. He doesn't need, he likes to be making that, attack the 6-yard box where that ball's delivered in. Obviously, with playing Mickey on the right at the minute, and obviously always cutting back, that takes a big part of his game away by not putting the ball straight in there. It might be where if Mickey still plays, that you might see Isak more, because obviously he likes the intricate passing and moving, and you find the little gaps to break them down. Obviously, like what De Bruyne and people and Foden do to, when they're playing against, they like the intricate little through balls and stuff like that, and giving goals and so that could be interesting. But do you know what? We've got options up there which we haven't had in seasons before, and I think the fact that we've actually been lacking in goals recently, I think we need to potentially try something different.
No,
you know what? Daps, I know I've not got you for much longer because I know you've got a show at 9. I just want to get Keith's opinion really quickly before we let you go. But I haven't gone with Almiron, Keith. Just as Daps has said, for me, I think he looks like he needs a rest.
Yeah,
that's my opinion. I don't know whether people agree with me. Obviously, Richie's nodding his head, so he might well agree with me. I think he might need a rest. Like him and Longstaff, I'm sort of taking them out of the team not because they're playing rubbish, but I just think they look tired and they give so much to the team that I think a rest could be actually good for them in the build up to the rest.
Do you know what, Pete? It's a good point you're making, because if you say, for example, in best case scenario, Newcastle have got a lead with say 25 minutes to go. And we know that Man City struggle against the press, like they did, like Newcastle. To be fair, when they pressed hard in an organised manner, they struggled. They didn't like it. They didn't like it being took to them like they've done to other teams. Now, if Newcastle are ahead or in the game, with 25 minutes to go, and you bring on Miggy, Willock, and Murphy, who you will know will press from the front. And even if, say, Isak wasn't having a good game, Wilson came off the bench as well, Wilson will lead the press from the front as well. That's, they're fantastic changes where you're keeping the pressure on them. So if they're, chasing the game or trying to push forward, then, you might hit them on the counter as well, because obviously Man City won't want to be losing at home to Newcastle. So
it's a very good change to make. If you can get to about the 65th minute, and whether it be 1-0 or whether it be 0-0 or 1-1, at that point, that's where City can start to look vulnerable and get a little bit frustrated. So, yeah, it would make sense, to be fair. Would make sense.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harm to roll the dice, change it a bit. We need a change now, I think. It's what we're calling for, really, after, only 3 goals in 7 games and the drought, and we haven't won we didn't win at all in February in all competitions. So I think there is a slump. There has been a drop off. There's a mid-season lull. It's time to try and change things. Ordinarily, previous seasons would have wrote this game off. So why not just go for it and try something different, try some new ideas? Isak through the middle. Gormley's young and new, wanting to make an impression. He's looked lively in a couple of games he has. Let's go for it. Make those changes. There is a couple of tired legs there. Bring those changes in. In the second half, you've always got the option midway through, if you're still in the game, to bring Almiron on or somebody like that.
Yeah, I feel like now you're at a point where the pressure's been lifted. The minute you were in that cup final, there was a certain pressure on you. Like all the eyes from the fan base. Yeah, it's great what you're doing in the league and everything. Like, I salute it. Listen, I've been backing you. I have. My one word of advice to all of you is every single person, maybe even me as well, but every single person that says they like seeing what's happening with Newcastle and you deserve it, you're a loyal bunch. I had that all until you win a trophy. And then you've seen what's happening with us. Now, whether you think it's fair or whatever, and do you know what? If we've done things and we face charges and we get found guilty, then no problem. But I think with you and your owners, you can already look at what's going on and think, do you know what? If City have done it, they've done it, and they deserve to be pulled up for it. But it does kind of seem like a little bit of a witch hunt, right? And it's that there are clubs out there that, like, I used to live in Manchester till I was 16. When I moved down south, people would ask me who I support. When I say Man City, never would the question, how long have you supported them for, right? Never would the question of, in fact, what they'd say is, oh, we like City, you're a loyal bunch. Even in the third tier, you're still bringing in 35,000. All that crap, yeah? Until you take food off of one of those teams' tables, then all of a sudden, it changes. The energy changes, right? Now, I'll be honest, I've always said, if our owners leave, and this was after the first trophy, if our owners leave and we go back to being third tier, second tier, or even Premier League City, because we were in the Premier League for a period as well, no problem. And if the owners go and buy Scunthorpe, Accrington Stanley, fuck it, Sunderland, yeah? I know you lot won't want that, but...
Don't put them in there. Don't worry what's been a great show. Don't worry what's been a great show.
If a fan base that have been loyal to a club get to see some trophies, then do you know what? No problem, right? But you try and take trophies off of these big boys' tables, yeah? They turn very fucking spiteful and very nasty. So you lot enjoy it. But yeah, if you want a prediction, I can't give one, I'm afraid.
So all right, you can sit on the fence for Keith and he'll do the same later.
It's superstitions. I can't do it.
Definitely. But look, Daps, I know it's 9 o'clock. I know you've got to go. Thank you for staying on for us.
Thanks for having me. Really good show. Really enjoyed it.
And honestly, so many people in the chat, loads of people in the chat have just said about that you've been one of the best guests we've had on all season on away days. Like your realism, your down-to-earth opinions, you know, the fact that you know your stuff, not just about Man City, but about other clubs as well. You talked about Arsenal tonight, you talked about Tottenham, you talked about Newcastle. You clearly know your stuff. And look, I know this because I've been on with you before. You've been on with us before. So we really appreciate it. And look, we'd love to have you on again.
No, whenever you need me, I've even been that real that I've been blowing my nose. I've got a stinking cold at the moment, absolutely stinking. Cut my finger, I'm going through. But listen, if any of you at the game on Saturday, then have a good time in Manchester, the best city in the world. So I'm sure you disagree, but for me,
best city in the world after Newcastle.
Do you know, I've never been to Newcastle as well. Never been to Newcastle, mad. But anyway, have a good show. Thanks for having me, and may City win.
Yeah. All the best Daps after Saturday.
Love.
Oh, looks like Pete's gone as well. It's just me and you, Keith.
Everybody's having internet problems tonight, eh?
It looks like it, yeah. So I'll tell you what we'll do is, because obviously there's been some fantastic talking points and some questions that have come in early. So I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll go through. Are you back, Pete?
Yeah, my internet's playing up right now, so I'm all over the place. But
go on, mate. I don't know what you had planned, so I was going to go through a few questions. No, I was just going to go through some of the questions that we all had to do, but obviously there's a lot of them that were for the Daps as well, but obviously he's gone now. But obviously we discussed the one that Tom Nix asked about, Haaland's record for the rest of the season. We've already done that one. You know, obviously another good, fantastic question. And obviously Keith obviously looks like Pete's frozen again, so I'll get your question. When Pep Guardiola does retire, who do you think Man City would go after as manager to replace him?
Do they go in-house, do you think, or do they go somebody previous in-house, like somebody like Arteta? Because if Arteta wins the league at Arsenal, does he come back in? Or I mean, who else is there really? Let's have a think. Do they go for a name? I mean, I'm surprised that some of the names in Italy haven't came over, you know, and moved on. Who was it at Juventus? He was at Juventus and then he left and then he came back. The current Juventus manager. I'm surprised they haven't really kicked on from there. Really. There's a few names there. Allegri, that's the guy. Yeah. So they've got a few choices, but when will that actually happen? When will he? It doesn't. He seems to be really content. He seems, for all Barcelona is the club of his heart, Barcelona is a madhouse, and it's almost like City have been able to replicate what Barcelona always were and have been, but they've done it in a calm way, and he seems really content there. I could see Pep there at least for another 5 years especially if they continue on the way they're going, always at the top of the table.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've even got stuff people like, would they be tempted by Poch? But obviously, you know, you look at what he did at PSG. Okay, it still wasn't good enough at PSG standard, but obviously, you know, he knows the Premier League a lot better than what he did Liga.
He's got a big job in him, and he's got a point to prove. Poch again, he's somebody.
He's used to working with a shoestring budget, which he potentially probably wouldn't have at Man City, and he's also got a bigger and better squad than what Spurs have got.
He didn't fail at PSG at all. He didn't fail at all, really. He still won them something. It's just they weren't satisfied with the direction of where it was going, and you know, his job has to be a level above what. When he comes back to England, if he would come back to England, has to be a level above Spurs. Without the greatest of respect to Spurs, it's just, it feels like he's got unfinished business in the Premier League, and it would be nice to see him again in another Big Six club.
Yeah, it is interesting because obviously another name I want to mention, which is someone we've just been talking about PSG. There is, you know, they've obviously thought that the grass was always greener on the other side, which we know it always isn't. You know, they moved on from Thomas Tuchel. There's rumours that they're not happy with Christophe Galtier now. Tuchel might be going back, but could you see Tuchel at Man City, or do you not think that's the similar sort of style of play, Keith?
I think again, Tuchel, unfinished business in the Premier League. The way that he left sort of Chelsea. Again, he's another one who did a brilliant job. Chelsea seem to have brilliant managers in short spaces of time. Really seem to go through them, and they're quite volatile. You know, certainly the last ownership was quite volatile with managers. I could see him doing a good job at Tottenham after Conte. I could see him back in the Premier League. There's no reason why he doesn't go to Man City, or he couldn't go to Man City. Is he going to do one or two other jobs in Europe before Guardiola vacates? Because I can honestly, as I was saying earlier, I could honestly see Guardiola there for another 5 years. It's City, the way things are set up. He is hanging on, and he wants to win that Champions League.
Yeah, totally agree. So obviously we've lost Dabs, and obviously we've lost Pete as well. So I'm going to do, because obviously we've covered a lot of the City aspect of stuff. So we usually get around to discussing Newcastle for the last part of the show. So I'll tell you what we'll do, Chris. There's been a few, obviously, things out there today in the press and stuff like that. The first one that was revealed was the fact that Amanda Staveley was at the football conference this morning, and there was a few things that got revealed that was really interesting for Newcastle going forward. And the first one was obviously we already knew about the Amazon documentary that's going to be coming out. Looks like it's going to be next season. But I think the interesting twist is that it's not going to be an all or nothing type season. It's going to be more of on a commercial aspect of Newcastle United this season. So what did you make of that news when you heard that, Keith?
I think it's very interesting. It's exactly what you want, really, because there is so many opportunities with the commercial side of Newcastle United, and if you could see the club growing, not only on the actual pitch, but you see the club growing internally, you see the club's presence growing as a commercial entity, I think that would be fascinating viewing. Really, maybe intersperse a little bit of the football stuff on and off the pitch. Maybe if they've filmed it already, or if they've done some filming already, that little bit of the excitement and the journey of getting to Wembley for the League Cup final interspersed in between would make good viewing. But for years and years, we've seen the club ground down by the likes of Ashley commercially, and I think it would be exciting to see that journey, the interest in meeting all of these new partners. And you know, you can imagine if they document some of the fan zone being built, if there's a fan zone, which eventually leads to the expansion of St. James's Park, and all of that's documented on a series or a series of one-offs, I think that would be great viewing, really.
Yeah, Pete, just to get your thoughts, because I was asking the questions. Obviously, there's a few we've finished off the Man City side of things. We'll obviously get to the latter part of the show. We turn our attention back to Newcastle, and obviously Amanda Staveley. Obviously, I know you've got a long day at work today, so you might be aware of it, you might not be. But Amanda Stady was at a football conference today, and she revealed that Newcastle have got Amazon record a documentary this year, but it's not going to be an all or nothing type documentary. It's going to be more on the commercial aspects of the club. So, just what do you make on that news?
For me, I'm not bothered. I'm really not bothered about that. If that documentary can attract more sponsors to the club, can let the club be exposed and shown for what we're trying to be, I'll take it all day long, because what that means is that there's going to be more people that are going to be interested in the club, more people that are going to be interested in the investment of the club, more people that are going to be interested in the sponsorship of the club. And what that means for me, you, Keith, and everyone in the chat right now today, more money that can be spent on the club, on signings, on the investment of the club in general. And that's what it's all about. Look, would we be happy with an all or nothing type documentary about Newcastle and their journey through this season, which has been a great season, a fantastic season, by the way? We would love nothing more to have that. There is nothing more that we would love to have a Tottenham and an Arsenal or a Man City type documentary. But I would quite happily sacrifice that exposure to ensure that this summer we have better sponsors, bigger sponsors, more money invested, to ensure that we have more signings and bigger, better signings that can take the club forward. So for me, I'm not bothered by that. I think there was an and I was just reading up literally as the show was on, really, about some sort of multi-club investment on the back of.
Yeah, I was going to get onto that next. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you go.
Right. You're usually running the show thing.
No. Rich, you got the questions. Go for it, mate.
I was just going to say. That's the one thing about the Amazon documentary, which I thought was interesting, because I remember when it first got leaked that it come out, everyone was unsure whether Eddie Howe would have liked having cameras in the dressing room and show about how he's working and stuff like that. So, it's interesting to see it from the commercial side of things, and it's not the playing staff and the coaching staff and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is on that, though, is if the relationship with Amazon is a success on this documentary, there's also the potential for it all or nothing in the future, which once again is more money into the club, more interest in the club. So I think it's a fantastic, astute little bit of business by the commercial department to get that sort of thing. As you said, Pete, this summer's a big area for Newcastle, because obviously we've heard about it, we've talked about loads about how FFP has affected Newcastle so far. We all now know that Castor will be developing the kits next year, and it'll be the final year of the multi-year contract. So we do know we're going to have a new shirt sponsor, so that's going to bring a lot of money in as well. And the clever thing is they're not announcing it yet, because obviously they want to announce it when Newcastle find out where they are at the end of the season. Because if they've got Champions League football or even Europa League, whatever, the amount of money that they can ask for extra because of the coverage they will get for European games and stuff like that is fantastic. And it'll all increase the FFP capability of Newcastle going forward. And bear in mind, it'll not just be the front of shirt sponsor we'll be looking for as well. There'll be plenty of other ones that we discussed, whether they come in straight away, will they rename the training ground or anything like that? We don't know. But the amount of possibilities that can come in are endless. And it starts this year. And then you get the kit deal next year, which brings more money in, increases FFP. So, everyone's saying that it's going to be a big summer this summer. It's going to be huge. And when they've been talking about 5 to 6, possible incomings, and then, with good caliber of players, it fits the timeline of everything that seems to be going ahead. But I thought that was interesting as well. And as I said, the point that came out as well was about the City group. It's a model that they're sort of looking at, and the City group, I think they've got 13 teams in there, in the City group, with teams and have a multi-team group sort of thing. It's teams like they've got the Melbourne City in Australia, New York City as well. So they've got teams everywhere. It's something that they want to get into, because obviously what they've found recently, especially when they've been looking at people like Matheus Franca, Maximo Perrone, when they've been looking at the South American market, it's somewhere that they haven't really, they've identified the talent, but they're competing against teams that have already got built up relationships with those clubs. So we're a new bidder to the party sort of thing. We've never really had the aspects of dealing with South American clubs as a business sense, really, for getting player recruits across. So building up a relationship like that. So the one thing you've got to take, especially when you're in Europe, you can't buy, invest in a club that's going to potentially be competing in the same tournaments as yourself. So if, say, for example, if Newcastle become a top 4 or a top 6 club, you look at the European, Europa League, Champions League, the team can't really be competing in those competitions. So you're looking at one where you're either looking at a top second tier team or a one where you can consolidate. They're not going to be necessarily a push for the title. Like Newcastle are going to be breaking into the top 6, pushing to win the league and stuff like that. You want one that's, say, for example, you look at, say, Scotland, for example. You've got 2 teams that can technically win the league and the rest of them are fighting for the rest of it. You're technically wanting a club that's going to be fighting for the rest of it so you can, loan your players out, so you can get your work permits through and bring that talent through and you can nurture them in the same way that you play a system like that. So when you heard that news today, Pete, what did you make of that?
I almost expected that to be the case, not necessarily today, but I genuinely expected Newcastle to go in that type of model. I genuinely did. Where it went and who's going to be our first expansion, I'm not quite sure. I don't know what direction it's going to be. There's a lot of talk that it's going to be Belgium. There's other talk that it's going to be in Holland. There's other talk that it's going to be in the US. I don't know. But if you're asking me, did I think that we were going to be a multi-club or a multi sort of bought club in terms of the owners owning various different clubs across the continent and owning from that perspective a little bit like City? Did I expect that? I did because it's a great way to grow. It's a great way to grow your brand and get people in different countries across the world to get to know who you are. Because no matter what club you own in these different parts of the world, it all circles back to the original club, which at this point in time for Man City is Man City, which is why they get the sort of revenue that they do. If we start doing the same, if we take over a club in Belgium, for example, or we take over a club in Australia, like we've just bought Garang Kowal from Australia, from a team in Australia. Who's to say that we don't take over that club and take ownership of that? And
I think the romantic in me would like this to see get Newcastle Jets.
Well, there you go. It would make perfect sense, Richie. It would make absolute perfect sense, and we could make that club bigger and better and stronger than it currently is with the investment put in place. And like you go into America, you look at the investments across Europe and where we could really go, and we could go without having to affect us as a club. So you don't want to be going and investing in Serie A or Ligue 1 or a team where it gets to the point where we're both playing in Europe or both playing in the Champions League and it starts to affect us because only one team can play in the Champions League with the owners.
You don't want any potential conflict.
Of course, exactly that, Keith. And you don't want to spread it far and wide to the point where it starts to affect us and what we do as a club. Because let's face it, no matter what, PIF have invested in us first. So we are the priority. What happens after that is a different story. And therefore, it goes back to my point. I didn't expect anything less. I just wasn't quite sure on which club or which country or even which continent it was going to be on. So that's the intriguing thing for me, is where we're going to start. There's been lots of rumbles all over the place, but there's been no real confirmation in my eyes. And look, I've missed a lot of things. Certainly today, I've not seen a lot what's going on, so I might have missed some things. But there's certainly not been any confirmation in my eyes where it's going to start from. You guys might know something.
No, there hasn't been a link regards any potential clubs. But I think for me, I thought about this when it first got mentioned. I think For me, I'd like to have the links. Obviously, we know that a lot of the City group they play in the sky blue. Why don't we have like a link to something that someone who already plays in black and white, for example? Because obviously you're not going to have the wranglings of the fans being unhappy with someone coming in and changing your shirts. You know, you what everyone's renowned for as a fan. And obviously, as I mentioned, Newcastle Jets, for example, they've got that link with Newcastle. You know, I've actually got my wife's got family from her family actually live over there as well. So there's a connection there. So that's a nice sort of thing to do. But you know, I think, you know, for me, another one we haven't mentioned, obviously the MLS. They've got the New York City over there. Another one that could be a fantastic potential to, because of the links we've already got there, could be Atlanta United, because you've got to look at, obviously you've got the links that you have with Miguel Almiron.
Darren
Eels has just come there, so he knows the setup structure and stuff like that. So there's already a working relationship there. So they could that could be a nice little marriage that goes hand in hand, sort of thing, going forward. With them being a new club as well, a relatively new club in the MLS, under 10 years old, they might not be too bad for changing their kit to a black and white rather than the red and like. You never know, because obviously it's, you know, if someone came at Newcastle, like you had at Cardiff the other year, changing from a blue to the red because obviously with Chinese dragons. You don't want to irate the fans before you've just got started, sort of thing. So it could be something like that. But
Richie, it could be the away strip. It could be the third strip. It doesn't have to be their full on first team colours. It changed to black and white. No, it has to be black and white.
Could be a third strip, a Europe strip or something.
There you go. It doesn't have to be the first strip. It could be, like I say, away third strip. It could be a training kit. It doesn't matter. But if you change that to black and white in response to the red, black, and gold, I don't think any Newcastle fan, I don't think the PIF, I don't think anybody would argue that if Atlanta United was the next club that we invested in. And I think club to invest in.
I was going to say about the thing interesting about Atlanta United as well is you look at they've got a big strong link to South American football as well, because you have a lot of South Americans play the league. Obviously, we've got Miguel Almiron from there as well. There's a lot of players who have progressed onto European, you know, top 6 leagues from going from South America to MLS. So that would be a fantastic starting point. I totally agree with you, Pete. The other one, I don't know what you might have heard of as well. We've actually recruited a new head of scouting as well, Pete. A guy called Paul McLaren. He's leaving Man City at the end of the season to come and join Newcastle. Keith, did you hear that news today? Because obviously that's something that you might have heard, and obviously I'll get your views on that after Pete.
That's news to me too. That's
okay. So he started off at Arsenal as a youth scout, went on to Man City as a scout there, and now he's been made head of scouting at Newcastle from the turn of the year. So that's there you go, Sonny. But Pete, go on. I'll get your thoughts on that, because obviously there's been a lot of links with, and we've pinched a few members of staff from Man City and Arsenal. Obviously, when you look to the head of commercial side of things, Silverstone, what do you make on that sort of thing?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'd not heard that news because I think I said to Daz this morning, I said to Keith earlier, I've been working all day, so I've got no idea. I've not followed anything that's been going on social media related to Newcastle. But if that's the case, there obviously has been links with Leyland or data analysis that's been going the other way. Yeah. He's moving to Man City. So if that's the case, why not snatch someone from them and bring them to Newcastle? And if that's the case, great. You know, if that's going to help us in our scouting network and being able to pinpoint top talent within, whether it's the Northwest region or if it's the Northeast region, whether it's we're looking at his or her ability. I think it's his ability to pinpoint certain players. I'm all for that. And this is what we need to be doing. And the point I'll make right now is that, look, we're not looking at signing scouting people from the likes of the Championship or the lower parts of the Premier League. We're literally nicking scouts and nicking top quality individuals from some of the best teams in English football. And so therefore, they're coming with absolute pedigree. Just like Leyland's going to Man City with absolute pedigree, because we plucked him from Liverpool. And he arguably, and a lot of people have said close to the club, that he's been a massive improvement on what they had before he signed for the club. And Man City have took him on, so why not take one of their top scouts, one of their top recruitments? And this is going to be the start, guys. This is going to be the start. There's going to be a little bit of a merry-go-round with certain players where they're going to pluck, and we're going to be fighting and arguing and maybe even giving new deals to members of staff that are not playing staff in order to keep them at the club. And this is going to be part of the fight, because let's face it, these type of teams are not used to losing in terms of losing their members of staff. These types of teams are used to plucking staff from all the other clubs that are rising in the Premier League and getting away with it. But we're in a position to go, you know what? You come to us and we can offer you more money. We can offer you this, that, and the other. And Leyland was a little bit different because he is taken over a whole scouting network of Man City. He's taken over a role at Man City that we could not possibly offer him at this moment in time. And that's why he's left to go to Man City at the end of the season. However, there are other positions that we've offered that we're probably going to pay more money to get these guys in, to offer them the opportunity to say, you can come and do that with us, but we're going to pay you more. And this is what the likes of Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, and all the rest of them aren't ready for yet. It's because we can offer them something bigger and better that they're not used to. And this is what I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle. You're going to see staff go. You're going to see staff come. Staff go. Staff come. We're going to be talking about this on the Funny Transfer Show. We're going to be not just talking about players coming in and players going out. We're going to be talking about staff coming in and staff going out. And this is the beauty of where Newcastle United are right now, in my opinion. But look,
as long as we're not talking about the head coach getting replaced, Pete.
Honestly, and you know what? There were certain rumours, there were certain question marks about Eddie Howe as the head coach moving forward. There was a few, like whether it was the overlap and a couple of other things about Eddie Howe. It's all rubbish. Eddie Howe is what these owners see as the future. They want to invest in an English manager to take this English manager, not just any English manager, but Eddie Howe to the top. They want him to be the benchmark in English football, to win Newcastle trophies, to win trophies as an English manager. I've got no qualms about that. But what I do see that's going to be interesting is the point that I've just made, is that staff in and around him are going to move in and going to move out. And it's really weird because we're talking about staff right now, but these staff are going to be playing a key role in how we move forward as a club.
It's transforming the infrastructure off the pitch. You know, getting those foundations right. We've seen it before. We've seen the likes of Dan Ashworth come in as well and look at the stellar jobs he's done at Brighton, for instance. And I mean, as a chief youth scout, this guy who's coming in, which was brought in by Fabrizio Romano earlier today, he's been at Arsenal, and you're looking further what's been happening in Arsenal with their youth development that's coming in. And look, you didn't even say what's been going on at Man City, because we already know as well how good Man City are and the infrastructure over there. So this can only lead to good things at Newcastle. I think it's another positive appointment off the pitch.
Yeah. Another change is off the pitch as well. Obviously, you may not know this, Pete. Obviously, Keith, you may have read this today that we've lost a director and we've got some more back in as well. So Majid Al-Sarrour's left St James's Park. Obviously, he was also the head of Live Golf as well. But we've brought in 2 new directors as well. I'll see if I can get these pronounced right. There's Asma Rizak and Abdul Majid Al-Hagbani have come into the board as well. So that's obviously Piff's new appointments to the board. Another bit of news that came out today, and it was Alfonso Leocadio. Obviously, we know him from when we cover him over the full fully loaded transfer show, Pete, don't we? And he had the fantastic news that Newcastle have opened contract talks with Bruno Guimaraes. So, Keith, what's your thoughts on that?
More positive news. It's been a quiet day, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, quite quiet.
Yeah, it's all the sort of positive PR that you want to hear, isn't it? Really, if Bruno's getting an improved deal to keep him at the club long term, on the way to what he was saying to being a club legend, his aspirations to be a club legend for the club, all of that's good stuff. I mean, this is what City did years ago, didn't they, with the likes of Vincent Kompany? He joined just before their takeover, and he stayed with them for a good 10, 11 years. Why can't we have that sort of thing where obviously the likes of Bruno came in early, he was there more or less at the start of the journey, and be here longer term? It's exactly what we want to happen. We've seen over the years too many people have left the club, haven't they? Or wanted to leave the club because we didn't have the right infrastructure off the pitch. Over the decades, this is flying in the face of that. We're bucking the trend here.
Yeah. Pete, obviously, I know that's pretty a silly question, but fantastic news regards to Bruno's new contract talks.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised by it. I wouldn't be surprised if that has been in conversation for the last 2 or 3 months. But for me, and I said it on a show earlier on this week, pay what he wants. Pay what he wants. People might disagree with that. I'm sorry. He is a world-class talent in this team. He is our best player. The fact that we signed him for £38 million is an absolute steal. And a lot of top teams are starting to realise that we have been very lucky to get him for £35 million or £38 million, whatever it is that we paid for. I think it rises to £40 million. So therefore, get him signed to a long contract, whereas he is committed to the club long term. He loves the club. He talks about the club in such a positive way. Get him signed up. Get him signed up to a big deal. Get him signed up, and so it's confirmed after hopefully a big win, fingers crossed, Saturday afternoon. And so therefore, Newcastle fans have got lots to talk about and lots to be celebrated on. And for me, I would be signing him up. There is no doubt about it. Sign him up to a long contract, keep him at the club for as long as we can. Because if Bruno Guimaraes stays at our club, not only are we going to be a better team, but we're going to be able to attract better players, because there's no doubt in my mind that so many players outside of Newcastle talk about Bruno Guimaraes in such a positive way that he could literally be a reason why people sign for the club.
Yeah, an interesting point from what I hear as well as just said, there's a gesture and for his loyalty make Bruno a top wage earner and a clause that he will always be the top earner. That's quite realistic as well, to be fair. Bear in mind, if you look at the people who are up there in the club, it's probably only him and Trippier really that you could class as world-class players at this moment in time.
Alan Shearer had the same deal. So when Alan Shearer was playing for Newcastle, he had that deal and that agreement for when Michael Owen signed for the club. And Michael Owen signed on a big wage at that time, over £100,000 a week. And Alan Shearer had it, that he was going to match it. So, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And I wouldn't be surprised by that. I wouldn't argue it. I wouldn't be against it. It is what it is.
Yeah. And there was one other bit of final bit of news Newcastle-wise came today. It was sort of came out, was leaked yesterday, but it was a bit more in-depth, came out today. And unfortunately, the takeover is back and being talked about again. Literally, not due to, because obviously how the legalities that Newcastle had to, the PIF had to say to the Premier League regards to the SOV being separate from the sovereign state and stuff like that. However, the court case between the USPGA, the PGA Tour and the Live Tour was open, and there was a nice bit of leaked information that came out regards to that about the PGA Tour lawyers had asked for a certain bit of information regards to how PIFs ran and the Live Tour, etc. And they basically responded saying that they couldn't because it was going to break Saudi law, but there wasn't a part of it that was saying that that's contradicting the sovereign state being a separate entity sort of thing. I'm looking at it, and bear in mind that PIF gave legal assurances to the Premier League that there was obviously the separation was there. But obviously, I know, Pete, you said you haven't heard much today. Keith, I don't know if you've heard about this as well, but can you comment on that this now, or would you rather talk about that one, a bit more? And are you worried about it? The rumours coming up again, or are you just thinking it's the media being negative plugging? If say, for example, if it had been Man United who would be more, would this be coming up again? What do you think, Keith?
Again, I'm going to basically at this stage, I'm going to say there's a part of us that doesn't know enough about this, really. There is a little bit of a concern there, but in the back of my mind, I've always thought this isn't going to go away. When the takeover went through, it was almost like it had rumbled on for a year and a half, and for it to go through, there was always in the back of my mind, there'll be a bit of dirt somewhere, and they'll try and get things re-examined at some stage, especially when at the time they basically said they would review it again, and if anything were to come out. So this doesn't surprise me. If I'm honest, I'm not. But at the minute, I'm not too worried about it. I think there's the Premier League have got a hell of a lot on their plate at the minute with Man City. There's so much going on at the minute. There's the potential Man United takeover. There's there's what they've just been through with the Chelsea takeover and that situation. So there just seems to be so much going on. It's what they're dealing with at this stage. It's something I'm interested in, and I want to find out a bit more about over the weekend, and some of the contributors on one or two of the other channels as well when they come about. And no doubt, obviously, it'll be unloaded as well, talking about the issue. I'm very interested to find out more, really, and hear their insights from the Middle East as well, as to what all of this means. But at this stage, it is a little concern, but I'm not too worried at this stage. I just want to think about the football, and Newcastle United winning again and getting on a winning run towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Stuff. Just to obviously, perfect timing. Pete Wilson, you just finished your part of that. But Pete, just to give a bit of background, because obviously you might not have been there. Basically, what's happened is the PGA's request to include PIF chairman and Magpies chair Yasser Al-Rumayyan in its lawsuit and order them to produce documents in the case. However, PIF are challenging that order, arguing both the Wealth Fund and its governor Al-Rumayyan are not ordinary third-party subjects to basic discovery relevance standards. Now, it says that this order is an extraordinary, this is what PIF's going back with, is infringement on the sovereignty of a foreign state that is far from justified here. Obviously, addressing Yasser Al-Rumayyan specifically, the document adds, they are a sovereign instrumentality of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the sitting minister of the Saudi government, and they cannot be compelled to provide testimony and the documents in a US proceeding unless their conduct, not Liv's or anyone else's, is truly the gravamen of the case. And obviously, the reason why it's obviously it matters is because of the fact that there was the the separation. But obviously, we had to give assurances that wasn't so. Obviously, there's a lot more going to come out about it. Personally, I'm not concerned about it at this moment in time. And obviously, it was Amnesty International have been behind it again as well. So there you go, Pete. I don't know whether you can comment on it at all, or your early thoughts on it before we get on to predictions.
Let Amnesty International have issue with it. They've had issue with the Newcastle takeover since before it was even a thing. For the last 18 months, And you know what? It still happened. And you know what? It will continue to happen, in my opinion. It won't be an issue. Newcastle United, as a new ownership, has been signed off by the Premier League. It won't be broken, in my opinion. It will not be broken. So for any Newcastle fans in this chat right now, there's over 100 in this chat. If you're concerned about what these articles and what the Premier League are certainly saying, I'm not concerned at all. Look, this is always going to happen, and it will continue to happen time and time again. There will be people within the media, there will be people that will try and bring Newcastle United into the mud wherever they possibly can to throw shade on Newcastle United. And they will continue to do it, and there will be continue to knock back. Why? Because Newcastle United was signed off legally by the Premier League. Equally to that, Newcastle United have gone about their business in exactly the right and correct manner since they owned Newcastle United. The ownership has gone about their business absolutely spot on. And for me, there is no fingers to be pointed off the back of this. But look, we're going to expect it. It's going to happen. Let them talk about Newcastle all they want, because in my opinion, my honest opinion, them talking about Newcastle, all it does is bring more exposure to Newcastle United. And I'm all for it. In terms of what the club are doing everything exactly how I would have wanted Newcastle United to be ran since they've taken ownership. So I cannot complain one little bit. So for me, from everything that you've just said, what's happened today, and I've not read everything. I don't need to read everything. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. Newcastle United have the best owners we've had for 15, 20 years. And I'll go back to the Freddie Shepherd days, because this club is being managed and organised in the correct and proper manner. We've got investment in the right areas. They're investing. We've just talked about the fact that we're plucking a player. We're plucking a top scout from Man City. Yeah, we're losing one to Man City, but we're plucking top scouts from there.
Swap deal.
You know what I mean? Yeah, swap deal, whatever it is. But we're doing things in the right way. Like, I cannot argue about this ownership. They have gone in and they've said they're going to do things in a certain way. And you know what? They've gone and done it. I can't complain about that. I love every moment of this. This is us building and being creative, and this is us building, setting the building blocks to be a top club that's going to fight the likes of Man City with Daps on tonight. He knows it. He's already said it tonight. We're going to be there. We're going to be there at the table, fighting with Man City in the future. He knows it. Like, Man City know it. Man United know it. Liverpool know it. Arsenal know it. Tottenham know it. They're trying to stop how quickly it happens. But you know what? We're going to be there. We're going to be fighting at the table. And when we are, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so, so sweet when it is.
Yep, totally agree. There's only one thing left to do, Pete, before we do the sponsors, is to get our predictions for the weekend. Go on, Pete, I'll come you first then.
Oh, me first? Oh,
you first, yeah. Give Keith a little bit longer to think about sitting on the fence.
I am... Look, I'm going to be positive regardless, so I'm sorry if you don't agree with me. I don't care. I'm going to be positive. I think Newcastle will win 2-1. I cannot not be positive about Newcastle United. I can't. I've always got to back the boys regardless. I might be proved completely wrong by 2:30 on Saturday, but always got to back the boys. But Keith, what are you thinking?
City are too good and too much on the bench there, and that lineup that was shown up earlier surprises a little bit with some of the options there. Grealish wasn't on, and Grealish has been playing a bit better recently. And again, if you go back to the final, the strength and depth were not quite there yet, I don't think. I was really impressed earlier this season with a 3-3 draw taking it to Man City. I think we will get there, but it isn't going to be this season. And I think the drought is going to continue for a little bit longer. But I think Pope and the defence will make it respectable. I think it'll be 2-0 to Man City. I think the score will be kept down.
No longer on the fence from 00 Stato. Fair play to you. Richie, come on, let us know. What is your prediction, mate?
Believe we'll get a positive result. I think we'll be a similar sort of result to what we had to do. I think it'll be a score draw, 1-1.
Okay. Would we take that, Keith? Would you take 1-1?
I think there's a value in what Richie was saying there, definitely, because certainly we've done better away from home at some of these grounds. Went to Old Trafford and got a point. Went to Arsenal and got a point. And Arsenal's a bit of a bogey ground as well. We'll never get a good result down at the Emirates. So there is merit, and we could actually get a 1-1 down there. I could see that outcome too. If Everton can get a 1-1, could have fired up Newcastle after the cup final. Could they actually get a 1-1 as well?
It's like you say about, look at the big teams we went to. We got a point at Arsenal, got a point at Man United. We beat Spurs. We got conceded a 98th minute winner, off Liverpool, which we've discussed that and we moved on from that. So we've got a good record going to the so-called Big Six this year, and they've got to break us down. So you could see something like a bit like what Man United did to us. They made it hard to defend and caught us on the counter. I think it could be like that. Obviously we're a lot more defensively astute than we were under Steve Bruce when he used to park the bus. We can actually defend organised now, and we can break with the pace that we've got, and we've got ability in that front, the front line now as well. That's why I'm thinking we'll get to the game, and I've gone for a 1-1.
Definitely. Alan Thompson put, Peter got my house, cat and dog on City tomorrow. Are you going to make me homeless? I'm sorry if I do make you homeless on Saturday, but yeah, I'm going to try and stay as positive as I possibly can, because look, we are going to turn a corner at some point, whether it's Saturday at 12:30 or whether I think it's Wolverhampton the week after, or whoever it is after that. We're going to hit good form. So I think we're going to get into that at some point. But as always, great points and opinion from the chat. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for all your questions, your comments, and your opinions on all things Newcastle. It really does make the show. And I've just got a message from Daps. He really, really does appreciate all the support that you've given him during the show. First and foremost, massive thanks to Richie for holding down the questions and the comments whilst my Wi-Fi just fell apart partway through the show. Massively appreciate it. And of course, 00 Stato for your stats. As always, you might not get the response you want, Keith, but I tell you what, you are absolutely spot on with your stats. I
can't deny the facts. I just cannot really. I'm looking forward to a time where Newcastle on the journey build and the refresh in the summer perhaps gets more light, certainly in the striking department. And again, because I think it has been a brilliant season. I think there's been a lot of promise there. Certainly, I think there's been one or two opportunities where sadly have went by the wayside, but I think I'm looking forward to things building on, much like the build in the mid-90s when Keegan got Newcastle and they had Andy Cole and they were sort of around about 5th, 6th place. And then the following season got Les Ferdinand and went for pushing for the title. I'm looking forward to that next regroup and this rebuild.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, that is for sure. But look, just before we set off, thank you, Richie, for the quick reminder, because there's a couple of weeks in which I forgot our amazing sponsors. But before that, click like and subscribe. We are so close, and we're about to take over the 5.2k subscribers in the chat. If you haven't already, click the like before you leave. It makes a massive difference to all things on Loaded Mag and NUFC. And of course, a huge thank you to everybody in particular to our fantastic sponsors at the radiatorshed.com. And look, Keith is in the doghouse. He's in prison.
So you get to predict the City win.
You know what?
I came off the fence and I'm still in prison.
Yeah, he's always going to be in there until he gives us a positive prediction. That's for sure. But there's some fantastic radiators and all things supporting the Radiator Shed. And of course, the animated rads are environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They offer a home survey service and will install if required. And obviously, a huge thank you to Northeast Partnership, the Install Works. Thank you for your continued support for Loading Mag NUFC. Thank you for working alongside Russ and the team. We are forever grateful for your support for our channel and what we do. And of course, if you haven't seen some of the quality of radiators available, get involved in their black and white radiators are absolutely top notch. And you look, if you've not seen Russ's van around, you'll see the Loaded Mag NUFC banner or signature on his van on the way around. So he's supporting the channel all the time. And of course, if you're not a member, you would have missed out on the prize draw last week, and there's going to be more coming up. So keep an eye out on all things the prize draw as it comes about. Click that blue button, and you can only do it by laptop. Click that blue button, $1.99 a month. Become a member of the channel. It will make a massive difference. And of course, I have to say thank you to everybody at H2O Bathroom Design, the Northeast's largest suppliers. Vilroy and Bosch bathrooms, where Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, ran by the family. Get down to the showrooms on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate in Gateshead. And look, you can see some of the quality that you can see on show with regards to the bathrooms of H2O. Absolutely spot on. And we joke about it every week, but the reality is that our wives are fighting us to get some of these. There is no breaking news. I don't know why I clicked that, but
I do, because you still trying to persuade the missus to get that tactic board off the wall on that. I could just picture you in the bath with your brandy on the little shelf next to you on the right hand side, with your magnetic boards on the grass, saying your tactics for Newcastle the week.
I'm asking the missus right now, can you sort this out for me, please? I'm not going to tell you my response, but I'm getting daggers. I'm getting a finger, and that's all I'm going to say. So clearly, she's not happy about that. That's for sure. But look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. You know, we always love away days for our opinions, our questions. All of the thoughts in the chat by everyone, you know, in the chat in particular, of course, Daps, who's been a fantastic guest, Richie, absolutely spot on, Keith, as always, spot on. Thank you for everyone, and look, let's pray for something meaningful, whether it's a point or three at the Etihad. Hopefully we can pull that out of the bag. But of course, to everyone in the chat and everyone watching on the channel, we do love playing away. Guys, how we like that? How do you like that?